Good evening. Welcome to another Subaru problem solving question and answer session. Decided to redo a questions and answers based purely on problem solving because I've had a lot of car issues recently, sort of problems brought to me to try and solve. So I thought I'd share some of those and give you an opportunity to ask whatever question related to Subaru running issues or problems. Hopefully I can shed some light on what could be a possible solution for you. If you don't know me, I tune Subarus for a living. I've been tuning Subarus for 17 years now, over in the UK, if you're outside of the UK. So yeah, if you're new here, ask a question, whatever you like. Problems would be ideal. Put a Q at the beginning of it, and that way I can easily identify what is an actual question or a problem. Give as much information as you can, like the age and model of the car and a bit of background to the problem. I know the text box that you get to type in is only relatively small, but if you carry it on to maybe one or two posts, and that way I should have all the information, or at least some of the information, to take a wild stab at what could be a solution. If you're watching this on replay, ask your question in the comments below and I will reply to as many, or if not all of them. I don't think I've missed any comments on any video so far, so yeah, try me out on this one. See, we've got quite a few people watching at the moment, which is great. Thank you very much for tuning in. Hopefully this session will be just under an hour or an hour at tops. I'll keep an eye on the clock and remind you, if you're going to ask a question, ask it towards the beginning, because at the end it gets a bit manic, or historically gets a bit manic. Good question, Neil. All right. Paolo, boa noite. Right, okay. So, some problems that I've seen in the last week. This is just in the last week. Misfire codes. This is a thing that comes up regularly, like the P301, 302, 3 and 4, as to what the solutions are, what the causes are for that. Assuming you've done the obvious things like changing the plugs, checking the coil packs, checking the connectors are on properly. One of the main things that I've seen, particularly in bug-eye WRXs, bug-eye STIs, blob-eyes less so, but becoming more so, is the neutral position switch causes these issues. Because the ECU gets the signal from the neutral position switch every time you change gear, that switch wears out. And if you're accelerating and the signal's coming in and out, the ECU just gets into a bit of a panic mode and just randomly picks a check engine light to throw up to say, I can't cope with this amount of information, and that code is generally one of those misfire codes. So if you've got the ability to data log what's going on, log the neutral position switch, see what that's doing while you're accelerating, and if that's dropping in and out, it will cause issues. On a WRX, it will just bring up a check engine light. It's not going to affect how it runs. But on a STI where you've got VVT cams, it will bring the cams back down to zero. So you'll feel the cams advancing and going back to zero, and it will feel like a hesitation. So that's a good pointer. If it isn't coils or plugs, I wouldn't change the coils as the first course of action, because it is pretty expensive to do that, whereas a neutral position switch is £30 or so. It is a pain in the arse to do on a 6-speed though. If it isn't those, then I've seen very recently the actual main harness connector near the battery, the terminals corroding on that, and it only takes one of the terminals to corrode a little bit so that the connection isn't as strong, or the wire actually breaks completely. So can solve that issue by bypassing it or repinning that plug. Also seen something that's caused a misfire code, just an aftermarket lambda sensor. If the value that it thinks is 14.7 AFR isn't actually 14.7, it's like 15.2 or something, it might have a little stumble at idle. I've seen this a couple of times recently, so recalibrating that or fitting an OEM lambda sensor can solve that issue as well. How are we doing questions wise? Oh blimey, loads of questions. Right, the problem solving ones are always fairly hectic. Problem solving is the hardest part of the job, because it's not always easy to get to an exact solution, or not straight away anyway, particularly with intermittent issues. Right, so if it's not wiring related or neutral position switch related, the lambda sensor is OEM, and you can rule that out. It could be valve seat or compression ratio related. A leak down test will tell you whether there's an internal issue that might be causing the problem. So that should get rid of any misfire codes if you go down that route. Another problem that I've had people bring to me recently is stalling coming up to junctions. Most of the time this is an aftermarket dump valve that's caused this, where the piston just gets gummed up and just doesn't close quick enough. So to test whether that is the issue, either fit the standard dump valve or blank off the dump valve and see whether it still does it coming up to junctions. If it doesn't do it, then it is the aftermarket dump valve. If it's a poor quality one, then throw it away, fit the standard one. If it's a decent quality one, but just the nature of what they are and where they are, they get gummed up with oil residue and dust, and the piston gets sticky. So clean it out with brake cleaner, WD-40, and reinstall it, and everything should be good. Okay, right, I'll leave that and let's come on to some questions. Quite a few. Right, let me just pick up a few of these. Right, let's pick that one to start with. Right. Do I find any issues with MAF sensors on new age Subarus, drifting out of spec, etc.? Worth replacing for new as a maintenance item? It's quite an expensive maintenance item. I think the last time I bought one, it was £195, something like that. Quite an expensive item. They do drift out of spec. Generally, they start to read below what they should be reading, so the car will gradually get leaner and leaner. Not normally a huge issue on a standard car with a standard map, but if it's had aftermarket parts fitted or mapped to be, rather than super rich like the standard Subaru map, and it's been mapped to be efficient, then running that leaner over time is going to cause an issue. It's an expensive maintenance item, possibly worth doing, but I would probably try cleaning it with some gentle like contact cleaner to start with, see whether that brings it back to life. Failing that, keep an eye on it, data log, see what you're reading, and adjust the map accordingly if you've got a way to do that. If you haven't, then I've got videos about that. Right. Okay. Not really a problem, but I'll cover it anyway. ESL, is it a good option for pre-98, or would you go EMU or Link? ESL have stopped selling the boards. So unless it's a second-hand one, it's not really an option anymore. Right. Right, let's see if there's any other issues here. I'll come on to that one a bit later, and that one. Right, Timo 1. Right, 2007 WRX stock mapped by me at RCM 4 or 5 years ago. It was probably 5 years ago. Recently had to put Cobra Sports Cat back on. Old one was leaking. Emissions barely passed. Had to try 5 times. Could a remap help? It depends what it failed on. I would guess that the lambda readings were spot on, and it's failed on CO or hydrocarbons. The remap will only be changing the lambda settings. So it's not really going to make any difference. The thing that I find with the sports cats is you've got to get them absolutely blooming glowing hot before you get it tested. What I do with my local MOT station here is get them to test the car, pass everything else. It will fail on emissions, go out for an absolute blast, lots of boost, lots and lots of boost, get the cat glowing back. Glowing red hot back in there for a test, put the probe up, and it generally sails through with 0 on both of those. Very rare that it won't pass then. But no, a remap I don't think would change anything unless it's failing on lambda. But if it's failing on lambda, it's possibly not the map. It'll be a sensor, an A2 sensor. Boom, boom, boom. Right, we'll come on to that one. Okay, right. Right, Tristan. Duncan, bought a wideband, don't want to remove and install downpipe a bunch of times. If I want to a sports cat, what can I do to the map to drop it in to safe so I can keep driving it as my daily? Map it using the cat and the DCAT, and see how much of an actual difference it is. It would probably only be a case of a slight lower boost with the sports cat, and at the top end where there might be a flow restriction, you might need to take a couple of degrees of ignition timing out just to account for the fact that there might be some stale air in the cylinders. So apart from that, it's probably not a huge amount of difference, but generally it's not going to be a huge difference. Boost control will probably be the main one. Bum, bum, bum. Right. Okay. Tommy Fairabend. Okay, question. Spring is around and took my 6-speed swapped O2 WRX out for first spin. Now it makes a squeaky noise when turned on, idling, running always same speed. Any idea where to start? Squeaking noise. Are we talking cam belt, auxiliary belt, or power steering belt? Squeaky noise. It could be that, or it could be the aircon pulley. That's the bearings and that, they tend to go quite easily, and the same with the power steering pulleys, or even the alternator. One of those pulleys, it would be the front end of the engine, my guess. And if it's not been driven for a while, then yeah, my first point would be the aircon pulley, I think. Boom. Right, WRX or an STI as a daily. Lost my WRXS hatch last year. I think anyone that buys a WRX ultimately wants an STI. So if you can afford an STI, buy the STI. Right, Rick. Hello, Mr. Hode. Okay, just clocked up 150,000 miles. Blimey. First tuned by me 120,000 miles ago, so it's 50,000 mile camp out job. Should I replace the water or oil pumps? Water pump, yes. Oil pump, no. I'd wait. I'd wait for that to. Yeah, I think if it was me, I would wait on the oil pump. The water pump, yeah, easy. Change that at the same time because there'd be no coolant in it anyway. That's done well. That's done really well. 150,000 on a EJ257. There we go. They can be reliable. Yeah, I'm not sure the math is in there for the service schedule. I'd need to double check that one. I've never seen it in there, but I've never looked that closely at that. It seems a bit excessive. Right, lots of questions. Problems with my 04 Forester STI, standard spec, first 30 seconds after driving off when staying cold. Misfires a bit, kangaroos, soon clears up, no other symptoms. Any ideas? Almost every Forester STI, including my own one, when it's cold, has a slight lumpiness when pulling away. I think it's something in the JDM cold start map. I will experiment with mine over the course of like the next week. I have made some changes and improved it, but I think there's a cold start issue on the JDM maps in particular. Lots of JDMs, including the Impressor STIs, they have a similar sort of issue. So watch this space. I will come up with a solution on that. Okay, yeah, I'll answer this one and then move back to some of the older questions. STI EJ257 short block for about £2,000. Do you think they're a good option if an engine needs a rebuild? Yes, I do think they're a good option. They're not bulletproof, but they're more bulletproof than the 255 and the standard EJ257. The pistons are stronger, and for £2,000 as opposed to a forged build on a 2.5, which sounds a bit ropey at the best of times, I think they're a really good option. That's what I'll be putting in the Blitzen. So yes, that's what I would be doing. Right, let's jump back to some of the questions. Okay, right, I had an issue yesterday with a really bad misfire. Really bad misfire, sort of 5,000, 5,500, sometimes 4,000, 4 and a bit thousand. Trying to identify it and figure out what the issue was. Cam and crank sensors were reading perfectly. Wasn't a fuel starvation issue, but the speedo, when it started doing this misfire, was jumping all over the place and most of the time wasn't working at all. If the speedo isn't working, then there is a rev limit set at 4,400 RPM, and it should have been applying that in all cases, but it could be that the Speed sensor was just telling it enough to actually stop it doing that, but sometimes was not telling it at all. So it was just hitting that 4,400 limit, really violent, horrible. So that was the cause of that was the miles an hour to kilometers to miles an hour speedo converter. They often go wrong, particularly 23-year-old speedo converters are very unreliable. Right, I had another issue with a 04 Forester STI that ran, drove perfectly, but if you let it idle for a couple of minutes, it would just randomly stop for no reason whatsoever. Took ages to identify what was going on. There was no codes in the ECU. There was no sensors that weren't working. But leaving it data logging, could see just a fraction of a second before it stopped, there was a really random VVT position sensor reading, and that was triggering it. Changed the VVT position sensor at the back of the cylinder head. Problem solved. Really, really baffling. That took ages. And two of these in the last 2 days, which is quite weird. Like problems with the brakes going solid after accelerating. You come to put your foot on the brakes, no pedal. Drilled down into why, and it was purely down to them changing the vacuum hoses, putting some nice new shiny silicone ones in there, and forgetting to put the one-way valve in. So subsequently, there was no vacuum on the brake servo. But yeah, weird that I had two of those in the last 2 days. Right, some of the other questions. Right, have I had a chance to watch Media's engine teardown video? If you have, what would you do different? No, I haven't. I'm planning to watch it, and I will watch it probably in the next 2 or 3 days. It's just this week has been very long so far. So yeah, I will be watching it, and I'm sure comment on that at some point. And sort of related, but not really. Neil's question: when I watched someone like Officially Gassed, why do the tuned Subaru seem to destroy themselves? Yeah, Officially Gassed and who's Donut. That's the other one that tend to kill Subarus. Donut, I think, are just trying to do it. It gets more clicks, more views if the engine destroys itself. And I think Officially Gassed, they don't like Subarus. Plus, there's some questionable Subarus that go on there claiming some rather unlikely power figures. But you get more clicks from engines destroying themselves, unfortunately. Right, Shadow Eunice. Get rid of those two. When tuning on E85, do I need to set up another axis for boost on Haltech 1500? I presume you're meaning flex fuel on that. I haven't set up flex fuel on Haltech, so I wouldn't know, but you shouldn't need to. The fuel maps will be fuel maps, whether it's 99 octane or E85. Shouldn't need to make any other changes like that. But if it's like a flex fuel setup, you'd just be interpolating between like a normal fuel map and an E85 fuel map, and the same with the ignition maps. Shouldn't need to have any other sort of axis in there for boost, in my opinion. But I haven't tuned on a Elite 1500 for flex fuel. Neil McKnight. Right, for 2013 2015 WRX CVT, what the normal tumble valve voltage is. Is it normal for the left and right to alternate between 3 and 0 volts? I don't quite know what you mean. Are they going from 3 volts down to 0 and then stopping there, or going 3 volts, 0 volts, and so forth, so forth? I don't know what the voltage are off the top of my head. I can have a look as to what they would be on an equivalent car. I haven't got a WRX CVT available to me, but I could probably have a look on something like that, of a similar sort of age, and see what the voltages are. Country boy, so importing a scoop type R, anyone in the pool, Bournemouth area that will look at it and MOT it, fit the fog light. Yeah, give us a shout. I'll bring it down to Triton at the airport and can sort it out there, no problem. Boom, boom. Right, how are we doing questions wise? Right. Okay, right, noises always the same. Did the change for the belt and the power steering just last season, coming from that area, not changing when revving up. You could isolate it by taking off the belt for the aircon and seeing whether that makes the noise go away. The little guide pulley, the tensioner pulley, can be the bearings in there aren't particularly good, so I've seen those squeak. So if you take that belt off, leave the alternator and power steering one on there, see whether that gets rid of it. It'll probably isolate the noise. It'll either go away, or if it doesn't go away, then you know where the issue is. Right. Harry Dent. So 99 GF8 wagon went off cold, starts hunts, changed the air control valve, cleaned the MAF, and nothing changed. But when you give it a boost leak from the inlet, it idles fine. Any ideas? I presume you're on a standard ECU on that. So if you give it a boost leak, it idles fine. I'd say the MAF sensor's playing up on that. If you're introducing air, and yeah, the MAF sensor's not reading right, in my view. That's certainly where I'd be starting the look. Plus, the 99 MAF sensors break for fun. Yeah, I'd be looking at the MAF to start with. Why is the RCM Black Series cheaper than the OEM water pump? Either is an upgrade for me. Mine is a lowly 255. I don't know on their prices. I haven't looked at the RCM Black Series for ages, so I've got no idea what that is. But water pumps aren't particularly expensive. Yeah, give us a shout, give us an email, Rick, and we'll come up with a price for you. Right, watched my video on replacing the fuel pump. Well, it was one of the 10 things, but I think the fuel pump, I had a lot of comments in that video about, oh, that's a bit over the top, changing that. But the reason I said change it when you do your cam belt, it's easy to keep a track of when you do your cam belt. So putting a £70 fuel pump in there at the same time, I really don't think is much of an issue. And then that way, at the very worst, your fuel pump is 5 years old. Fuel filter, yeah, they're less than a tenner, and it's a 2-minute job to do it, unless it's a Hawkeye and it's in the tank. In which case, I think Subaru say something like 100,000 miles on those. So essentially, don't need changing. Plus, they're an absolute nightmare if you get the O-rings wrong on those. Boom, boom, boom. Right, is it possible to have switchable maps on a standard ECU for, say, for different RON rated fuels? I understand it's possible to have anti-lag and pops and bangs, but how would this be set up? Yeah, you can do using Carberry on the 16-bit ECUs, or mod or DiMod or whatever on the 32-bit ECUs. You can have essentially different fuel maps and different ignition timing maps and different boost maps. So rather than just having the anti-lag on and off switch, you could have another switch which is changing from 95 RON fuel to 99. So yes, it is possible. There are sacrifices with these extra features. You know, some of the hidden features in the standard ECU may be dropped, and you can sometimes feel differences in the way the car is. So if you're concerned about it being 100% OE feel, then I wouldn't recommend going down that route. But if you are okay with it being a modified car and having compromises, then yeah, it can do that for you, no problem. Boom, boom, boom. Right. Okay, what are my thoughts on a constant misfire when idling? No fault codes. Tried another set of coil packs, no change. 2008 Impreza R non-turbo with AVCS. Oh, I've got a car with me at the moment that I've been trying to solve a not really a misfire idle, but a slightly lumpy idle. I've gone, changed plugs, looked at all the coils, swapped the coils around, checked the wiring, done a leak down test on the engine, no issues there. Changed the flywheel because that needed doing anyway, but for a brand new standard STI flywheel, and it's still slightly uneven. Just got some new injectors to pop in there to see whether they're going to solve the issue. It could be any one of those things. I would probably go, if it is actually a misfire rather than a slightly uneven idle, I would start from the inside out. So I'd do a leak down test on the engine, see whether there's any valve seat damage or compression issues, and start from there. Sort of find out whether the heart of the engine is good, and then work outwards. Boom, boom, boom. Noticed at idle stationary on a windy day when a gust of wind catches through, presume the wind hits the air filter. Yeah, it's similar to what would happen on the dyno, where it just causes a bit of turbulence around the MAV sensor, and it just takes it a little while to recover from that on an induction kit anyway. It doesn't happen so much on the standard setup with the snorkers, snorkers in the inner wing. So that sort of softens a lot of that, but with an induction kit it can happen. Okay, take the belt. Take the belt off. It will do it, and absolutely no problem with making the videos. I really enjoy these. They're absolutely shattering, and I'm exhausted by the end of it, but it's cool. Right. Boom, boom, boom. Right. Hi, Grant. Is it worth getting a link flex fuel sensor to save trying to get? Yeah, they're all the same. Those flex fuel sensors. They're I think it's Continental that make them. Link put their badges on them. Haltech put their badges on them. Cyvex sell them as well. Just go with the one that is the best price for you. They're all the same. Right, Neil Brown, is it worth changing from centre coil to coil and plug? Car is running happily with no issues on boost on a tuned engine. Yeah, it might be running happily at the moment, but at some point the centre coil is going to fail, or the plugs, the HT lead's going to fail. It will run cleaner with the coil on plugs, and it is better from a spark point of view. So yeah, I think it's worth it. Can you get a car running on speed density as smooth as a car running a MAF? If you're talking about like Carberry type speed density setup, then that's not an ECU that's designed to do that. So you're relying on the code that's been written by Car Bibbles, I think it was. And there are compromises. If you're talking about an aftermarket ECU that is like map sensor based, so speed density, absolutely no issues with running that smoothly. They work much better, in my opinion, than a standard ECU running the MAF sensor. But there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to get it close. But just accept with the likes of Carberry, Mert Mod, Dime Mod, or whatever it is, there are compromises. Yeah, Grant, yeah, absolutely. It'd be worth doing that, because when on a link, there's 3 sort of fuel methods that you can set up for when you originally map it. So you can set it up like modelled, traditional, or I can't remember what the other one is. It's been a long day, but normally you'd set it up traditional, but then if you then add flex fuel to that, you can't just swap it over. So you're best off setting the flex to start with, and then you're not having to redo things. Okay, following up on the earlier question with regards to TGV voltages, basically it seems that when the left TGV is open, the right is closed, and vice versa. That's weird. It could be that it's just a login sample rate, that it's just happening to pick the wrong moment in time for each one. Is there an idle issue with it, or something like that? If you can, I would just take the TGVs out altogether and switch the codes off, if you're able to do in your country. I know in certain parts of the USA or certain states, you're not able to. Right, yeah, running 1.6 bar on a Link G4. Yeah, you'll have no issues. It won't need remapping. It will just kind of feel slightly crisper and nicer, in my opinion. Right. Best way for changing your oil. How are we doing time-wise? Right. Yeah, drain plug out, oil filter off, obviously with a drain bucket underneath. Let it drain for a while. Obviously dipstick out as well, and the cap off, just to help sort of drain the last bits out. New filter on. Fill the new filter up with oil. Put that on. New crush washer on the sump plug, pop that in, tighten that up, but not too tight, and then fill it up to the required level. There's a lot of people that say about connecting the crank sensor and letting it prime to start it up. It's worth doing, just as a precaution. But I know most Subaru technicians at a Subaru garage will not do that. Right, is ECU labs that you have on your site an ECU upgrade or just a remap option? Would it allow a 99 GC8 to go mathless? The ECU has to be sent off to France for them to do some hardware changes and software changes on the ECU. And then it's a special piece of software to then remap it from then on. I'm not convinced by it personally. I think it's still using a really old framework, really old ECU processors and all the rest of it. I would just bite the bullet and get a proper aftermarket ECU personally. I know they're more expensive, but you can pick, a Link secondhand or a Alcatech secondhand or, other ECUs secondhand that will be better than adapting a 25-year-old ECU, in my opinion. Right, Arusa, have you changed your mind about the cylinder 4 cooling mod, I presume? Nope. I still think it's snake oil, and I am waiting for someone to prove otherwise. I've had 2 cars recently with where they will just randomly overheat, and were an absolute nightmare to bleed. Both of them have got cylinder 4 cooling mods, and one of them is actually a head gasket issue as well. So I don't think it solves the problem. I think it causes some other problems. But by all means, if you're an absolute stalwart for it and really think it's good, then give me some proof, and then I'll buy into the idea. But at the moment, I didn't need it on my time attack car running 850 horsepower. Still ran that on the standard radiator. Bullshit that the standard rad can't cope with the power. The Forester STI, I had a standard radiator in there, no cylinder 4 cooling mod on that, running 450 horsepower. I've never felt the need for it. I've never seen the need for it. I don't think it does anything. And I still think it's snake oil. But prove me wrong. Right. Right, Stephen Gibson, the TGV issue, had the same issue, had the motor off, bolted back on, put it right, okay, and need to be put on and then spin it around a bit. It might be that. Send me a data log of the TGV issue anyway, and I'll have a look at it when I get a moment. Right, do I think it's worth porting the standard exhaust manifold? Yes, I do. Certainly above 350 horsepower, you'll start to see the benefit. I will test it at some point when I get an example car to do it, because it is quite time consuming to take the manifold on and off. But certainly as you're approaching 400 horsepower, there's definite benefits from it. Right, Paul Cash, on my 96 Impreza rally car. The engine is standard. I would like 300 horsepower, but what would you suggest doing other than new ECU? Right, I was thinking Link and have a 2D05 turbo. Right, is that a version 2 or version 3? If it's a version 2, then definitely need to have a different top mount intercooler. The small slanted one is absolutely awful. You will not get over 300 horsepower through that reliably anyway. And if you're using it for rallying, you need to have a bit of safety margin in there. So a bigger top mount if you're allowed in your regs for rally, or front mount ideally, depends what group you're in. Depends on whether you've got a restrictor on the turbo as well. If you've got a restrictor, then you would probably want to be concentrating on running as much boost as you can early as possible. So exhaust manifold and up pipe to be as small a diameter as possible, just to maximize the velocity through the turbo so you can spool the hell out of it, and just bring your whole power band down so that it's not affected by the restrictor. Yeah, you've got the cylinder 4 cooling mod on your GCA. It doesn't overheat and runs lovely and no issues, like almost every other Subaru without the cylinder 4 cooling mod. I'm not convinced by them. Okay, right, so Matt Hart, JDM SCI Blob Eye, very nice indeed. Slight tick from Stone Cold when starting in the garage. Only real noticeable when clutches at the biting point. Is this likely to be in the release bearing? Yeah, it could well be. Yeah, all the pressure plate on the clutch. Is that standard clutch in there? It could be either. If it was me, I'd probably put up with that until the clutch needed doing and then investigate what the issue is. Right, trusted aftermarket brands for intercoolers. Mishimoto, Hyperflow, Perrin intercoolers. I think Cobb do them. It depends on the vehicle, on the age, and what you can get in there. Seen a couple of I think it's Wasner intercoolers recently that were very good. What else have I had? APS. I'm not sure whether they're making them anymore. Yeah, to be honest, even the cheap eBay intercoolers are very good. It's just the pipework is appalling. When you get the pipework out of the box, you wonder whether they've even seen a Subaru, let alone tried fitting one onto one. If you get the core and get that fitted on the car and then get someone local to you that can make up the pipework to make it actually come anywhere near the turbo or the throttle, then it'd be worth doing. Be a good cheap option. Right, Luna TL, how sensitive are the coil packs on the new age? I see some minor delaminating on all coil packs while suffering idle roughness. Any chance I need all new coil packs? They're an expensive option. If you've got another set of coil packs that you could borrow from someone, just to identify whether that is going to solve the issue, then that would be my solution. It doesn't take long to change the coils. But yeah, putting a new set on, probably not worth it. But the delaminating would start to indicate that there's water getting down in between those cooling fins, and it's only going to get worse. Okay. Yeah, it's not a brand we get in the UK, so it's not not anything that I've seen. But yeah, the ETS stuff is very good. All right. Any more questions, or have I run out? Okay, so the clutch is original on the JDM. Blob iron, noise goes away once warm. Yeah, wait until you've got the clutch to do, and then put a new release bearing, which you would do anyway. I fitted an extreme heavy duty clutch, effectively their equivalent of the Exceeded Pink. Very impressed with that. So if you were thinking about that as an option rather than Exceeded Pink, certainly impressed me. Like their Exceeded Twin, like the Extreme Twin clutch that I fitted on the 727 Blob WRX. That is awesome. Right, can I do a video on AVCS tuning, one for drive-by-wire tuning? Yes, well, the AVCS tuning is a difficult one because it does vary per car and it does vary per turbo. And the only way to really see whether it's actually making a real difference is on the dyno, where you can overlay the graphs and go, yeah, I gained 5 horsepower there, or I lost 5 horsepower there. For me, doing a video on it and saying, oh, I did this, it's not really going to help you unless you're able to get your car on the dyno and do similar sort of experimentation to find out what the break-even points and what point it needs to change the VE of the engine. So I'm not sure it would actually help that much. With the AVCS side of things, probably go down the route of looking what the JDM maps have in them and copy those as best as you can to start with to see whether it makes a difference. If you've got access to a dyno is the only way to do that, in my opinion. Drive-by-wire tuning, it depends what you're wanting to do with the drive-by-wire. It's, there's lots of things you do with drive-by-wire to make it more progressive or more aggressive. And it's a personal taste on that as to what you like and how you want it to react. But I will be doing a very, very, very detailed tuning guide. Probably going to be filming that this weekend because what else am I going to be doing over Easter weekend? So that's going to be a long video, but I think I'll probably keep it as one long video rather than breaking it down into individual videos. So yeah, watch out for that one. But the AVCS one is probably something that I will do for the Academy members, just on the basis that explaining the tests that I would go through using or doing it on the dyno. Ooh, okay. Hawkeye WRX gearbox. What are the limitations before upgrading to STI? They break with standard power, and I've got customers running 500 horsepower on them. So you tell me what the limitation is. Generally, it's the driver is dictating when it's going to break and a bit of luck. If you can't afford to replace it, it's probably going to break. Upgrading to an STI, it's a big investment, but I would wait until the gearbox breaks before upgrading it. Hello Duncan, love your videos. Not really a problem Right, okay. When doing an overhaul for a 2.1 stroker, what needs changing and checking, and how to know when it needs it? Right, when I was doing time attack in my my Impreza with the 850 horsepower nitrous malarkey, I kind of got to a position where I would do a refresh every year on it. So I'd take the engine out, just check all the valves, all the cylinder heads for cracks, and I would replace the piston rings at that point. A couple of times I changed the big end bearings, but once I got them open, there was no wear, no damage, nothing. So after that point, I didn't do that, and never had a bottom end failure on that engine with what was that, 6 seasons of that. Split a couple of the liners on the EJ22, but you know, it's useful to find out when the liners break. What would I do? What would I check? Leak down test will tell you a good condition for it, so that'll tell you whether the valve seats are leaking, whether the piston rings are sealing on the bores. Just keeping a track on the oil pressure, and if that starts dropping, then you know that you've got an issue developing. So leak down test regularly, and oil pressure gauge, and knowing what it is now and what it was. It's the change that you want to keep an eye on. But yeah, piston rings for definite. If you're taking it out and looking, you might as well change them. Right, Paul McIntyre. Hi Duncan, is it possible to remote map a base map for running in a completely new engine setup? Everything in the engine bay is new. Plan to run an Alcatec. Mathless, right. If you've got the actually I've not tried on the Alcatec software, because that's really old software. I think there's kind of DOS based software that might not come across in TeamViewer, but you would need to have the lead and the dongle at your end to actually run the software. Assuming you have, then it must be doable. If I can get into your laptop and have that software running, I'm sure it's possible to do it. Completely new engine setup, yeah, it'll be doable. Right, we're doing time wise, we've got a couple of minutes left, so if you've got any questions, problems, fire it in now. Otherwise I'm going to call it a day in a bit. Right, 255 Walbro fuel pump is now over 10 years old. Can the old pump make the car run rich? No, it can't. There'll be something else going on. That'll either be an air leak after the turbo, or fuel pressure regulator starting to break down and not doing the right things, or MAF sensor. Depends on the ECU that's in the car manual. I would say the fuel pump, if it's over 10 years old, I would replace it. But it's not causing it to run rich. There's something else that's doing that. Paul, yeah. That's what you do at Easter, is it? Yeah. Okay. I can't stand hot cross buns, or hot ticked buns as they are at Asda, or whatever they are now. Cam belts, brands of cam belts. On the race car, 850 horsepower, I had Cosworth Kevlar one, I had a standard one, and a Gates belt. None of them broke. I also had what was the other one? The pink one. HKS one. I had one of those as well. None of them broke. They all connected the pulleys to the crank pulley. They all work. They've all got the same amount of teeth on them. It's a personal preference. I wouldn't want to recommend either one over the other, to be honest. When they're going to go, they go because they're old or they're misused or a water pump seizes or a cam seizes. I've not seen an actual belt snap because a belt's snapped. It's generally something's caused it to snap. Right, how does one get Academy member access? If you go into the video, click on join, there's different membership levels. So you've got supporter just to kind of support the channel, but Academy member, which is the next level down or the next level up, depending on how you want to view it, will give you access to the Discord channel and the other videos and other bits and bobs. Boom, boom. Right, Steve Gibson. In learning view, tables 1, 2, 3 and 4, what do negative and positive numbers mean? As in, how can I tell I have a boost leak from the numbers? Yeah, the 1, 2, 3, 4 depends on the math grams per second, so that it's kind of into sections like 0 to 5 grams per second, 5 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 50. So if it's taking out or adding in fuel at these sort of areas, then that's what it's talking about. It's the number 4 area that it carries forward into open loop. So if it's taking fuel out, then the MAF is reading higher than it needs to be, or it's got too much fuel for what it thinks the air fuel ratio is being read from your sensor. Doesn't always mean it's right. It could be the sensor that's wrong. If you've got a boost leak, you tend to have big numbers in the corrections. Like the learning view, it will go up to 15% either way. If you're getting 15%, then there's an issue somewhere that needs to be investigated. Right, car, what's the Academy about? Just helping people to self-tune their cars, or at least understand more, even if they don't want to self-tune it themselves. Knowledge, like Subarus, to get the best out of Subarus, you've got to know a bit about how they work, how the ECUs work, in my experience anyway. And you know, it's about me sharing a lot of detailed information, advice, looking at people's like logs from their ECU and try and just give them some pointers as to how to make their cars better. Okay, dongle and cable, awesome. Yeah, if you got those, then brilliant. Don't, whatever you do, break that dongle. There are no new dongles available, and yeah, if you break that dongle or lose it, then it's game over for getting into that ECU. Right, I'm going to have to call it a day, guys. If I haven't answered your question, then please pop it in the comments below the video, and I will reply after the video's kind of converted to a replay video. But hopefully should have a video out of the weekend, and we'll be back to normal Monday, Wednesday live streams next week. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.